The Chacham Bashi was the chief rabbi. In 1835, it was an official position, of course, paid. Before that, it wasn't legally official, but the term was used. The Surgun were the forced population exchanges that the Jews were influenced by. As I explained, in the middle of the 15th century, they were relocated from the Greek peninsula to Istanbul, the capital. In the 1600s, the Jews of Salonika were repopulated partially, about 150 families, to Rhodes. So the base of many communities is based on the repopulation, the initial origin. A firman is an imperial decree from Istanbul, from what was called the Sublime Porte, and it's binding. Now, it didn't always play out that way. Let's say if there was a blood libel instigated by the Greek Orthodox against the Jews, the firman forbid this, but it couldn't be stopped, and it couldn't necessarily be quelled by the Ottoman troops. The millet was the autonomous structure of these independent religious communities. A dhimmi was an Ottoman subject and a protected minority, and I explained that it was not only for the Jews. A raya is an Ottoman subject who's a dhimmi. I explained that before. The jizya was the head tax for the minorities that they had to pay on a communal level to the central authorities. Capitulations are the privileges to the foreign powers given by the Ottoman Empire. Essentially, when the Ottoman Empire was losing, they were put in adverse situations. So England and France, for example, capitalized on that, and Jews who were under their protection enjoyed a privy status where they couldn't be brought to court by the Ottomans, and they weren't taxed by the Ottomans. This was problematic for the Jewish population because these foreigners, sometimes they were mostly wealthy, they sometimes wouldn't give their fair share to finance the Jewish communities. Sometimes they were great beneficiaries, but this is where the tensions came. There was a group called the Francos who were from Livorno, who were foreigners with these privileges, and so they ran some of the Jewish communities, like in Damascus or Aleppo. In Aleppo, they enjoyed Venetian privilege or tax exemption, but in the end, there were many confrontations. These foreigners, they introduced modernization, and it also whittled down the whole religious influence. So you had Sephardic communities all throughout the Mediterranean basin. In the Balkans, you had Sephardic communities, of course, not just in Salonika, smaller communities like Kastoria, like Yanina, Larisa, which is the Turkish Ottoman name was Yenişehir, in Istanbul, in Edirne. In the Ottoman Empire, the first capital was Bursa in Turkey. The second capital was Adrianople, Edirne, and then Istanbul became the capital. But so then you have in the eastern Mediterranean also Sephardic communities, Aleppo and Damascus. Some of them were mixed in with Judeo-Arabic, what's called Mustarabi Jews. In Cairo, you had many Sephardic Jews. You had, even in Tunisia, you had Portuguese Jews, you had Spanish expulsees. In North Africa, the divisions of the Jewish communities were between those who were the old established Jews, let's say of 1,000 years from Judeo-Arabic culture, and then the expulsees, who were called the Megurashim, those expelled. You also, in the former Yugoslavia, had Sephardic communities, like in Belgrade, Sarajevo, Monastir, which today is called Bitola. A little community called Niš was a very authentic Jewish community course, the island of Rhodes and Crete. Crete is the melange between Judeo-Italian Jews, Romaniot Jews, and Sfaradim. The Jews of the Peloponnese were also a melange, but they were killed in the Greek Revolution, so there are no remnants. Wherever the Ottoman Empire went, you had Sephardic Jews, and so that's why you had a Sephardic community initially in Vienna and Budapest, but also you had Sephardic communities in Bulgaria, not only in Sofia, but in smaller places like Kushtindil, Rushchuk, which is called Ruse, Vidin, Samakov, etc., etc.